Hello, I'm Justin Shaw, and I'm going to be talking about drawing in perspective. When drawing in perspective, we have to start with a few things. We have to know that in the world, there's a horizon line. Anything above this line, we're looking up at. So if you see a building or anything like that, it's going to go above the horizon line. Anything below this line, you're looking down at. So if you're looking down at a floor or a pool table, that's how that works. The horizon line, you can move this line if you're looking up and most of your scene is looking up, like if I'm looking at skyscrapers. My horizon line is going to be very low. If I'm looking down at ants, you're going to see that I'm looking down. It all depends on your composition. I'm going to stick it in the middle for now. And once I've got that, now if you know how to draw with basic shapes, squares, cubes, cylinders, things like that, if I want to draw them in perspective, say I want to build a bunch of cubes and I want them to be in perspective as they get smaller, as they get away. Well, I have to know that there's things called vanishing points. I'm going to put one right in the middle. And this is a point that anything that gets next to it, gets close to it, should vanish towards it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say that I want to draw a cube and I want it to get smaller as it gets closer to there. So I'm just going to start with a point and I'm going to say I want my cube to be this tall. Well, I'm going to connect my cube to these points. And I'm going to say that I want my cube to be this wide. Then I'm going to copy this edge, and I'm going to copy this edge, and now I'm going to say I'm going to connect each one of these corners to my vanishing point. Now I'm going to copy this edge, and I'm going to say I want my cube to be this thick, and I'm going to copy this edge, copy this edge, copy this edge, any parallel edges, and now I have a cube. And if I continue this pattern, what you'll start to notice is things feel like they're getting smaller and smaller and further away. They're vanishing to the vanishing point. This was created by a man named Brunelleschi, who came up with the idea of when he was drawing buildings, he took a picture frame and he hung string over it into a grid. Because before he did this, no one could figure out how to actually draw things in perspective. They were always weird. But he would say, I have a building, and I could figure that all the points should meet at a vanishing point. And he was able to figure out that anything that's in line will all be in line to a vanishing point. It was a magnificent discovery. What we're going to be doing today is, now that we've done a cube, I'm going to do an ellipse. I'm going to connect it. I'm going to copy this same exact edge. And now I get a cylinder. And if I copy this shape here, it rescinds. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing to a cube real quick, because you're going to want to draw all of these three shapes to prove that you can go create perspective. And you normally erase the lines back here because you want them to be transparent, and this is a pretty lazy cylinder. And then I'm going to draw a triangle, connect the points, and this is the basic system for creating, copy that edge more. This is the system for creating 3D shapes in one-point perspective. One-point perspective gives us a lot of advantages. If I draw a box here, and I connect it to the corners, and I copy these edges, this gives me the hallway illusion. I'm just going to keep copying that box. And then I'm going to say that, say I want to add a sofa or a vending machine. Say I want it to be this thick, or a door even. And then I'm going to say I want a window. I want it this tall. Connect the points. If I want to draw a sofa, copy these edges. Do you see how I get a room in perspective? This is called one-point perspective. Now we're going to talk about something that's a little more complicated. We're going to talk about two-point perspective. That's where I move the points. I make two of them. And I'm going to draw all three of the shapes, and I'm going to show you how they look in two-point. In two-point, it's interesting. I'm going to say that I want my cube to be this tall, but instead of connecting it just to one side, I need to connect it to both points. Then I'm going to copy this edge, and I'm going to say I want you to be this thick, and I need to connect both points the same way, and I want it to be this thick here. Connect both points, and it draws the rest of it for me. You see how I don't have to draw the others? Every corner needs to connect to a piece. Now I'm going to do and what's so important about drawing the cube in perspective is because it teaches us how to draw everything else. Say I want to draw a cylinder in perspective, which is one of the assignments. I'm going to say I want my cube to be this tall, my cylinder. Make it a little thinner. And now what I need to do to draw a cylinder is if I take a square and I divide it in half, and I divide that, and I go through and I say, cut it in half, cut that in half, cut this in half, cut this in half. What I can do is I can come through and I can say that I want a circle. This gives me a semicircle, and then I just round it off. But what this does is it says that if I can draw any shape inside this shape, so if I go cut them in half, do the same up here, and I say connect my pieces, and now I connect my outer edges. Now I have a cylinder inside of a cube, and I can do this at any angle. See, because if I draw an ellipse here, and I draw an ellipse here, and I connect them, now I have a cylinder going in any perspective. And the same thing can be said with a sphere. All I have to do is make sure that it stays within the confines of it, and this is how to draw a sphere in perspective. It's very simple. And if I want to draw any shape, if I put a strange shape here, like let's do this, and I just go over, I draw this same shape on this side, connect the outer edges, and erase everything else. Like a chess piece a little bit. This gives me the ability to draw anything in perspective by being able to draw anything on a face of a two-dimensional object. Now we're going to stop at two-point perspective, and we'll continue on with the next piece next